All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Elliot Frolic-Stina Pell. I'm on the steering committee of ETHS Parents Engaged, and thank you all for turning out. A couple of notes. We are live streaming on two channels. One is through ETHS's YouTube channel, and the other is through the Intrepid Dan Coyne's Facebook Live. Thank you for all of you who showed up in person, because you're the ones who get to submit questions. We don't have a good way for people at home to do that. And we should also thank ETHS itself for providing the room and providing their YouTube channel, so that this will be available after tonight for people who want to either listen again or who didn't have an opportunity to listen tonight. The four sponsor organizations for tonight's forum are ETHS Parents Engaged, the Evanston-Skokie PTA Council, the League of Women Voters of Evanston, and the Evanston Community Foundation. ETHS Parents Engaged has monthly meetings of interest to parents. Our next one is on April 10th about partnerships between ETHS and Northwestern University. We have one in May for parents of incoming freshmen who are current 8th graders. The League of Women Voters has asked us to point everyone to their website where they have a voter guide for the Oakton Community College race. That's available online, so people who want to learn about that should make sure to do that. I also want to thank all four candidates, both for being willing to run and for coming tonight. I want to ask Rebecca Parmet from the Evanston Community Foundation to say a couple of words, and then we'll turn it over to Lolly Watt from the League in Wilmette.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Rebecca Parmet. I'm with the Evanston Community Foundation. I just want to thank you for being here. The Evanston Community Foundation serves to invest in a just, vibrant, and inclusive Evanston. And since 2000, we've been working with our community partners on the Public Service Challenge. So we are so thrilled that you're here. And we believe in democracy, and we believe that you all being here tonight is one step toward that. So thank you.
Okay, good evening. My name is Lolly Watt, and I am with the League of Women Voters in Wilmette, where I serve as the advocacy chair, and I also serve on the state board for the League of Women Voters, where I'm the vice president for governance. Our rules state that no one can moderate a forum in an area where that race would appear on their ballot. So obviously ETHS does not appear on my ballot, and I'm delighted to be here. I could not do this without our two timers who are in front. They will be holding up how much time is left for each of our candidates. And obviously we couldn't do this without our candidates because then there'd be no point any of us being here. Please do not signal support or opposition to anything anyone says. Do not clap your hands, do not boo. I hope I don't really have to tell you that, but just listen respectfully and let us model what appropriate civic behavior is. We drew numbers to see who would go first, so we are going to do the opening statements in a particular order, and then the reverse order for the closing statements. We're going to move around during the questions and have a different person starting. No flash photos, please. The video will be posted as you just heard, so you can point friends and neighbors to that so they can check it out. And the candidates have been provided with the first question in advance, so just so you know that. So they have had a chance to consider their answer to that. Questions after the first one, if you would write down anything you have on cards you should have been handed when you came in, hold them up. Our question sorters here will pick them up, and the questions need to be appropriate for all four candidates. So you can't address a question to just one of them or two of them or whatever. And we will check them for duplication. We will also see if maybe some of them need to be combined or whatever, and we will try to get through as many of your questions as we can. So with that, the opening statements for 2 minutes each, we're going to start with Ms. Taterich. Yes. No? There you go.
Now it's on. Okay. Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and ETHS Parents Engaged and the Evanston Community Foundation for hosting this forum. I'm grateful to be here and to have this opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Stephanie Tatarich, and I'm running for District 202 Board because I believe the power of public education is only as strong as our commitment to equity and excellence for all of our students. Preschool to high school, every child in Evanston deserves access to the best opportunities in education that we as a community can provide. The mission of ETHS is to, quote, embrace diversity and to educate all students to their maximum potential. And as an aspiring 202 board member, I want to deepen that commitment and champion the remarkable equity work that the high school is doing right now. As a member of the 202 board, I will be committed to making sure your kids, regardless of circumstance, receive the best education that we can provide so that they can thrive while in school and become their best selves in life. My experience as a university administrator, my perspective and connection to ETHS as the parent of a high school student in 10th grade, and my commitment to educational equity are the qualities that define me as a candidate for 202. As a higher ed professional for almost 2 decades at Northwestern, I've worked to deepen the NU-ETHS partnership, and I've navigated and implemented strategic and large-scale organizational change in various contexts. I know how vital it is for all stakeholders to understand and be engaged with the change that's taking place. The board, the administration, and really the entire ETHS community, including parents, teachers, and students, need to be fully aligned in order to create a thoroughly equitable, accessible, and inclusive culture that elevates all students and addresses systemic barriers to academic achievement and opportunity. To that end, I will be a champion of student success and teacher development, committed to closing the opportunity gap, a vocal supporter of education and workforce pathways, a responsible steward of fiscal resources, and an advocate, a true advocate for equity-based policies and practices.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rolowitz, your 2 minutes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Rolowitz. I'm coming to this position as a parent and as a community advocate. My background and my training is in educational advocacy, trauma-informed care, anti-bias work, and child advocacy. My experience includes working in child welfare and advocacy as a foster parent and a foster parent mentor, educational and medical advocacy for students with special needs, connecting to and building relationships with the underserved populations of Evanston by providing peer-to-peer emergency supports such as transportation, food access, and infant care, and representing the PTA Equity Project in D65, which builds relationships amongst all parents in all D65 schools seeking equitable funding and resources in schools. My top priorities for serving at ETHS is to continue with urgency to address the persistent problem of race predicting outcomes through auditing the curriculum, disciplinary policy, and racial bias within our systems, as well as addressing the cultural bias that exists in our city. I want to spotlight our students with special needs and IEPs by creating baseline evaluations for academics, analyzing the data, and recommending next steps towards career and independence. And I want to work to expand certifications and dual enrollment at Oakton Community College so that every student leaves ETHS on a career or college path. My work in the community is what brought me to this role because I desire to have a broader influence on our overall community and the disparities that I have seen in my other work. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer?
Salutations, everyone. Thank you for coming out to join us this evening. My name is Slaney A. Palmer, and I'm running for the School Board of Education, District 202. I'm a uniquely qualified candidate as I am the product of 2 distinct systems of education. I bring to you the perspective of a minority parent, an educator, as well as someone who's committed to and have spent their entire career fighting for educational equity, educational injustice, and also for equitable outcomes for all students. I'm a public school teacher. I currently teach at Highland Park High School, and I'm also employed in higher ed where I serve as a reading clinician down by Truman Community College. I've seen firsthand what it's like and what it means when the teaching learning process is impacted positively or negatively by both internal and external outcomes or processes. I bring to this position the perspective as a secondary school educator, as well as an expert, and I'm motivated to serve on the school board. I'm an advocate for quality education from the vantage point that I know firsthand what impacts the teaching and learning processes, and I want to ensure that all parents and students alike are gaining the best bang for their buck in educational terms. My top 2 priorities for serving or wanting to serve ETHS are: 1, to ensure that ETHS is implementing effective programs and policies driven by data to gear at getting positive outcomes. This is included to ensuring that we're doing longitudinal studies to know where students are at in 2 to 4 years after they've served, after they've been here, and also what transpires after. Lastly, I want to ensure that we have an equitable distribution of resources to ensure that all programs are equally funded, to ensure that all students gain access to fulfill their educational outcomes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Parsons?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight and for hosting this forum. In August, I spoke to over 500 district and school employees during their Institute Day. I gave the welcome message from the school board's perspective as they prepared for the school year. It was a humbling experience. I knew my words would set the tone. Because of that, I decided to speak to them as a parent whose son had graduated from ETHS and the importance of every student receiving, if not the same and even better experience than my son did. It was important for them to know that teaching my son and expecting him to be successful was not only an ask, but a requirement. It was important that knowing his name, it was important that they knew his name and understood his culture and connected to his heart. That this was not only what I anticipated, but it was an expectation. You see, it was my desire that our community transforms into the belief that all students, regardless of where they live and what they look like, can learn and be driven to reach their full potential. So my son graduated from Walker and Shute and ETHS. I didn't benefit from graduating from ETHS, but it was important for me to bring my son back to a community that helped raise me and for me to give back to my community. The youth that I work with in this community stem from my experience of being a club director at the Boys and Girls Club, being recruited by Ford to run their union, and currently the CEO of McGaw. I believe that in the dreams and the desires of the students should be actualized. As a community, we should continue to not just demonstrate the data or discuss the data around the achievement gap, but finally put actions behind how we're going to make the achievement gap go away.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to move to question 1. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer this, and this is the one that were provided yesterday so they could think about their answer. And we're going to go back to Mr. Terich for the first response. Question 1. There's an entrenched opportunity gap in District 202 based on race and income. How would you, as a board member, hold yourself accountable for reducing this gap? What information and data do you believe should be used to gauge both progress and outcome improvement? How will you hold the administration accountable for this change? Thank you.
Well, I think.
Is your mic on?
Sorry about that. Okay, first of all, I think that you need to start with the basic premise that every student has the right to learn and to receive a quality education. Every single student has that right. And then you need to really start looking and understanding the inherent structures that are in place that keep some students from achieving and other students achieving at all. So we need to, as a board and as an administration, as a faculty, staff, team, we need to push for cultural, structural, and institutional understanding of why race in particular, because we're talking about the opportunity gap along the lines of race primarily, certainly income as well, but but we look at it through the lens of equity, and we really need to pay attention to how these barriers are race-based. So for example, tracking and differentiation have serious consequences for equity and exacerbate race and class learning gaps, and the administration, the board, myself included, would need to understand that and would need to be able to dialogue effectively with other board members and administration members who understand that as well. You need to engage in careful analysis of organizational routines and diagnose causes of outcomes and engage in purposeful redesign to achieve different outcomes. This is all about dialogue. This is about conversation. This is about engaging with your team, your fellow team members on the board to effect effective change.
Thank you. I can repeat the question if the rest of you would like, but if you don't need me to repeat it, we'll save a whole bunch of time. So, you're good, okay. So, Ms. Rolowitz, on question 1, please.
How will I hold myself accountable as a board member? I will engage in ongoing trainings, both personal and professional, reflecting on my own personal experiences, identify my biases, to determine how my experiences have shaped my interactions with others. I will listen thoughtfully to the community and my colleagues, heavily weighing others' experiences to guide my understanding and decision-making. I will continuously educate myself on knowing our students in our town, to understand achievement patterns through demographics, history, extracurricular participation, discipline, special education, and graduate rates. I will engage in dialogue with community leaders and parents to make sure that our schools work in partnership with them and to promote parent involvement as the cornerstone of our students' success. We need our data disaggregated, not just by race and socioeconomic status, but by disability, gender, and English language proficiency. We need continuity in data from early childhood through 12th grade, and we need to partner with D65 community advocacy groups and the City of Evanston to obtain a broader picture of our students before they arrive at ETHS. I will hold the superintendent accountable for measuring, analyzing, and reporting the data in the interest of transparency and improvement. We must create action plans with deadlines, evaluation points along the way, and clearly define the measurable outcomes. The administration can improve its communicating of the data to the parent community.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer?
As a board member, I will ensure that ETHS is appropriately prioritizing tax dollars to close the opportunity gap. I believe we must do the job or do the hard work and tedious work of examining our budget and expenditure as it relates to where we're allocating our resources in tackling the persistent problems that inhibits our students from achieving academic, social, and emotional success. Beyond it, I believe also it is incumbent that all elected board members must do the work. Beyond that, the information that we need is that in order for us to assess whether or not we are actually having an impact on closing the opportunity gap, we must engage in the sort of studies that tells us where our students are at in 2 to 4 years, what they're doing and how they're faring. That is how we'll know exactly if we've actually made an impact on the student outcomes. ETHS has done a lot in tackling structural racism, and that looks at detracking its lower level courses. I believe that we must go a step further in ensuring that the budget is a moral document, and we must ensure that we fulfill its moral obligation. And that can only be achieved through transparency and ensuring that we are always prioritizing to the needs of our student success and ensuring that we're doing all we can to ensure that all students gain access to all the resources that's available at ETHS.
Thank you. Ms. Parsons?
So I will continue to say that this is a community crisis and that we must all come together to address it. It is also a national crisis, and we must think about the additional factors of home and trauma. I will also say that no gap can be addressed if kids or students cannot read. I will continue to push the conversation into the community. I will continue to broaden our perspective on addressing the gap in honest and transparent conversations. I will make sure school board goals align with specific steps to do so. I believe we have all the data we need. We need to stop analyzing or overanalyzing and create an enhancement process to strategically target the literacy gap that exists with incoming ninth graders reading below grade level. However, if we need multiple measures, grades, grade data, GPA, access to honors and advanced course ninth grade reading levels, graduation rates, daily attendance rates, housing instability, survey rates on connectiveness and belonging, just to name a few. Accountability looks like many things. It looks like questioning the strategy and analysis. It looks like fidelity on implementation on strategy. It looks like a discussion on outcomes, allocation of resources, and assessments on those allocations. In order to hold the superintendent accountable, we must be more specific with our goals. And as I stated, that includes why are we doing it, what have we done already, where do we want to go, and how do we get there?
Thank you. Okay, the next question, we are going to start with Ms. Rolowitz, and the question for all of you is, why do you feel the proposed alternative school is an important complement to ETHS, and how will you, as a board member, support that initiative?
The proposed alternative day school for ETHS is a placement for students who are not quite ready to mainstream into the general campus at ETHS, but who also no longer need services outplaced into a different school outside of our community. The goal would be for our students who are outside the community to come back and be more members of Evanston and have access to ETHS and have access to enrichments and other classes happening here. I would support the work of the day school by making sure that the students who are chosen for the school or who are advised to come to the school, that it's an appropriate fit for them, looking through their IEPs and making sure that that environment is appropriate and the least restrictive environment for them as special education students. And if they are more appropriately placed in the mainstream of ETHS, then that would be a better environment for them. So I think really making sure that we have a good fit and good supports in place at the day school as far as social workers, psychologists, and trained staff to meet their needs on a separate campus, which is close, but still separate. And so we need to make sure that they're fully supported with the kind of staff that we would have here at the main campus, but that they have at the alternative day school.
Mr. Palmer?
Could you?
Yes, I can repeat the question. Why do you feel the proposed alternative school is an important complement to ETHS? And how will you, as a board member, support that initiative?
First, let me say that while I might believe that it is an important complement to ETHS, I also fundamentally believe that ETHS has a vast array of resources and space to actually foster, to take care of the needs of the students who are placed into this alternative school. Now, beyond that, if this becomes a reality, as it is a reality, I fundamentally believe that, one, we have to look at the resources that's allocated to helping these students, and what are the conditions under which these students are placed within the alternative schools, and what is the intended plan to get them back integrated. As an educator, I don't hold any exclusive policy of excluding any type of students from my personal class, and I don't feel educators at large want to harbor that exclusive thought, because we are in the business of being inclusive, and that includes students with IEP 504s and whatever learning deficiencies or abilities that they possess. Beyond that, I again, as a board member, I believe that one of the fundamental roles for me would be to ensure that the students are being taken care of and provided with the particular supports that they need to reintegrate them back into ETHS.
Thank you. Ms. Parsons?
So along with my colleagues, I supported the day school coming back into the community. And the goal is really to keep our students in a community that they're familiar with. So instead of busing them or sending them to another community, the goal is to keep them here and to allow them a process in which they can participate in extracurricular activities if they so choose. As a board, my main responsibility is to support the administration And it's to make sure that we provide the direct outcomes or goals that are needed and necessary in order for them to do the job that they need to do to make sure that every student's need is met. It is not the responsibility of the board to be in the details. We provide oversight, and so that would be my goal as a board member, making sure that whatever we said we would do, we are doing it, and be very clear on what those goals are.
Thank you. Mr. Terich, and your mic before you start.
Thank you. I think that, I think that an alternative day school is absolutely, has tremendous potential to be a complement to the work at ETHS and to the culture and community at ETHS. My understanding is that it's been erected, in a short walking distance from the high school, but that it provides an environment where students with special needs and special education needs can be served most appropriately in that environment while still feeling connected to the larger environment of the high school, that being extracurricular activities, sports, and other kinds of opportunities here at the high school. So that's obviously something that students don't have access to if they are being bused outside of the community or being transported elsewhere for their education. So I fully support that in theory. I do also think that it's very important for these kinds of opportunities and these kinds of supports to be communicated well to the families and to be communicated early to the families, that we need to look at a student's educational career from, kindergarten through high school, and that needs to be part of the plan, and that needs to be something that is understood at a very early point in the student's education.
Thank you. We're going to start with Mr. Palmer for the next question. And the question is, how do you assess the current state of the District 65, District 202 relationship? What would you do to improve it?
So I believe that the current relationship between District 65 and 202 is I'd say one that's in its, I'd say what you call, not infancy stages, but there are some bumps along the way with that relationship. And I think that one of the sticking point in particular is around the literacy level, because ETHS is saying that we have students coming in who aren't at the appropriate literacy level, and then the data is pointing that there are students who are not doing well at 65. What I think we could do from our end being here at ETHS is that I fundamentally believe that we get the students for 4 years, no matter what they come like, no matter who they are, no matter what their background is or their outside circumstances. And it is our responsibility to ensure that we're serving the needs of those students once they're here. So as a board member, what I think, what I bring to the process is that I want to bring more relational and be more conversation in terms of if ETHS has to take the role or the lead in creating a foundational literacy model to say, here's the programs of study that we have, here's what we're doing to assist our students, and then continue to have that dialogue with District 65. I think we'd go a far way in creating the sort of system or structures to ensure that students transition from District 65 into ETHS and continue to be successful.
Thank you. Ms. Parsons?
Yeah, I think, like any relationship, this is a complicated one because we both want what's best for our students. And really, in isolation, no one is at fault. So we have to continue to have the courageous conversations and not be afraid to be vulnerable and say that there's more that we should be doing, we just don't know what more looks like. I would also say that our school board members need to dialogue more frequently and in trying to figure out how we can best support our administration in helping us meet the goals or the needs of our students. So that would be, one improvement that I would give. The only time we come together is during that joint board meeting. And then, everything breaks loose. So I think there's opportunity for us to have more dialogue and leave our vulnerabilities, our egos at the door, and try to focus on how we can help our students, because at the end of the day, they're all our students. They will sooner or later wind up at ETHS, no matter where they start. So that's what I think.
Thank you. Mr. Terich?
Yeah, I think that this is a case of looking, even though it's not a unified school district, of looking at 202, increasing the opportunities to look at 202 and 65 as a unified body of experts that can really work together effectively and think holistically about the entire, 0 to 12th grade path of students. I think that absolutely communication and the increasing the number of opportunities for the boards to work together. ETHS is a tremendous leader in so many respects, and the work that it's done, for example, on equity and changing the culture here, and the detracking and a lot of the things that, the partnerships with Northwestern. There are a lot of opportunities for ETHS to be a real leader and a model to District 65, I think, in a lot of respects. And so I think that's absolutely important. And one more last thing I would say is that, well, actually, I won't say it because I only have 15 seconds left, so I'll try to find another opportunity to suggest
Thank you.
it.
Ms. Rolowitz?
I think we definitely do need to strengthen the relationship between D65 and D202, especially as far as the board work goes. I think that we could probably have more conversations and more goal setting together. There seems to be a little bit of difference between measurements that are done in 8th grade and measurements that are done in 9th grade that don't exactly match up. And we could probably look at how different our evaluations are for students. And I just think in general, again, we really need to look at the whole child going further back, because if the high school receives students who are not at level, there just simply isn't enough time to completely turn that around and educate them properly in 3.5 years. So we really need to have stronger partnerships with D65 and going back to early childhood. And I think having a child in D65 and having a familiarity with their board and their administration, I would feel very comfortable having those conversations with them and really digging in and expanding our work together. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to start with you, Ms. Parsons, for the next question, which is, based on your observations, name one area where you believe the board and administration should take a different approach or need more focused attention. How will you advocate for that change as a member of the board?
So, I mentioned that there should be an increased focus on 9th grade reading levels. And I know we've had discussions about the achievement gap as a whole and the disparities that exist within our high school students, but I think we need to target our focus on those students coming into the district reading below grade level. As I stated, it is really hard to address the gap when they're not reading at the grade level they need to be reading at. So we have a current goal that speaks to the disparities of the achievement gap, but we haven't really gone that deep to isolate 9th grade reading and figure out how we can track that enhancement process. So that's one area that I think if we're looking at our goals again and we're trying to be a little bit more specific, I would focus there. Because I think then we could track the progress. We can create some small steps towards change. Instead of trying to take a bite out of this big beast, we should start in a more narrow perspective and then build up from there.
Thank you. Mr. Terich?
I think that we miss a lot of opportunities with communication, and in my conversations out in the community with parents, there seem to be a lot of questions about what the board does, why policies are created the way they are. I think that we could work on transparency and communicating out and communicating early. I don't think that you can ever really communicate too much. And so there might be ways that we can, bring more of a spotlight onto what the board is doing, what the administration is doing. Instead of asking parents to come looking for it, we could be more proactive and thoughtful about the way that we communicate various initiatives. I think that's extremely helpful for gaining buy-in from community members, from parents, and everybody feels better if they feel like they've been consulted before decisions have been made. And so I think that it's really a matter of letting and assuring community members that things are being done with their kids in mind, and that and the reasons for those decisions.
Thank you. Ms. Rolowitz?
I think one area for improvement for the board and the administration is to really take a hard look at our special education. I think that historically, special education is not something that has been a high priority for our school, and the students have not maybe had their needs met over time. I think that we need to be looking at the true full potential of our special education students and make more of an effort to have them really mainstreamed in our school, because having that experience is truly beneficial for special education students to be mainstreamed, and the data does support that they will make their greatest strides by being around typical learners, as well as I think the community aspect of it for everybody in the school. I think we need to make a greater effort at seeing them as a part of our community and saying we need to make sure they succeed to the same degree to their same potential that all of our other students are succeeding and have the right to succeed. So I would like to see a really heavy conversation about special education happen at the board level.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer?
The stated goal for the school is to increase each student's academic trajectory as dictated by multiple measures. Fundamentally, I believe one direction that the board could go is actually, again, holding the administration to task that we must deliver on this. Every academic institution, ETHS bar none, is tasked with in educating our students. If it is, there are multiple measures and multiple known factors. We know that there are X amount of students not coming in at literacy levels. We know the external factors. We know all these different things. So I believe the board must hold the administrative team to that one fundamental principle, that we must increase every child's academic trajectory based on these multiple measures. And let's target the literacy as a classic example. Because we already know this, we have to put the type of systems or structures in place to support the students, to ensure that they're getting the best value or best quality education. And two, we must also support the teachers who are important, who are critical to ensuring that these students can and will succeed and will achieve the academic success. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, we're going to start with you, Mr. Terich. It's kind of a long one. Evanston Cradle to Career, of which D202 is a key member, is focusing on early childhood development leading up to kindergarten to help expand kindergarten readiness across the entire community. Are you willing to use District 202 resources, which exceed District 65 resources by approximately $7,000 per student, to support efforts to have all children land in kindergarten ready to learn? How would you spend these resources?
Well, it's a great question. I think that from what I understand, that Cradle to Career is a great idea and a great potentially a great resource for the community, but that it's woefully underfunded. And I think that any initiative that the board is going to put its energy and support behind needs to be appropriately funded in order to succeed. So while I don't know the details in terms of, what exactly I would spend or what the amount appropriate would be to spend on Cradle to Career, I do think it needs to be looked at very critically and perhaps in some challenge to the way the current setup is operating, because I don't think that it's set up to succeed. And I think that it's a nice idea at this point. I think it's absolutely essential that we think about the whole child and we think about the entire academic path of all of our children. And it certainly is, in terms of equity, something that is absolutely necessary in terms of perspective and rationale, but I don't think that it's funded appropriately. It needs to be better supported.
Thank you. Ms. Rolowitz?
Evanston Cradle to Career is a relatively young organization. They've only been working for a couple of years now, and I think originally their goal was truly Cradle to Career, but in the recent sort of emergency literacy issues that we're having now in our schools, I think they're realizing that they need to refocus their efforts on early childhood literacy. I do support Evanston Cradle to Career, and I think we should be talking to them about how are they, reaching out to the 0 to 5 set in families, and what sorts of interventions do they plan to have, and also supports do they have for those families. I think we can definitely expand things like home visiting and access to nutrition education and parenting classes. There are all sorts of things you can do in the 0 to 3 time to prepare children and then hopefully have them enrolled in our public preschool, which is JEH. I think the issue with our kids arriving not kindergarten ready is that a lot of the kids don't have preschool, or they don't have any sort of contact with the education system prior to showing up at the day of kindergarten. And I think Evanston Cradle to Career can make more efforts to find those families and intervene at a much younger age.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer?
So essentially, the question is asking me one of redistributing the allocated resources. Before I even get into stating what my position is, I believe that I support the work of District 65 and 202 wholeheartedly. So I think one of the things that we need to do first and foremost is look at the structures that's now in place. What structures do we have in place currently that would support the work of Cradle to Career? And I think next we have to define the intended outcomes, both the short-term goals, the medium-term goals, and what's the long-term projection. And then and only then, after those things are in place, if we have the existing structure, or if we need to create or facilitate the creation of more existing structures to support Cradle to Career, then I believe we can usher in the idea of now allocating funds to supporting that work. If those things are not in place, I can't say we should take a deep dive into it to support it. While the infancy stage is important, I believe that we must take a look at what's our immediate structures, what are the intended outcomes, and how will this impact us in the long run. Then and only then, we can decide to move what next. Beyond that, we must continue to support the work that is being done inside ETHS and ensure that the services that we're providing now is actually making a direct impact to the learning outcomes of the students that are here.
Thank you. Ms. Parsons?
So because I think this is a community issue, I would say that Evanston Township needs to be a part of those community conversations and collaborative. Cradle is a collective impact initiative. It's not an initiative that develops programs. However, Cradle has been around for over 5 years, and it's been operational for over 3. So it's been in our community for a while. I think there are very serious conversations that need to take place at Cradle to really speak to the concerns and this urgency we have of students, our kindergartners not coming into kindergarten ready. And that requires a broader conversation beyond what the school districts should do. So yes, I believe Evanston should pay into Cradle, but I also believe so should the city, so should Northwestern, so should nonprofit organizations that have a vested interest in the future of our children. But we need to reassess the arrangement we have with Cradle and its effectiveness to currently respond to the needs of our community. That partnership needs to be reassessed. So, yeah.
Thank you. The next question, we are going to start with Ms. Rolowitz. And the question is, in this era of smartphones, social media, etc., how can the schools interest students in basic skills such as reading, literature, and writing essays? Do you think these activities are still important?
Of course, I think those activities are still important, and I think this is the million-dollar question for any parent. As far as engaging them in these types of activities that us adults still value, I think it comes down to having our teachers be engaging and teaching the content and the curriculum in a way that is engaging. And I know from my own experience of having good teachers, I mean, a good teacher can turn any subject matter into something interesting. And I think too, you know, as long as we do want to raise our children in a very well-rounded, soft-skilled manner so that they can go out into the real world and navigate the real world, they do need all of these types of skills that we can offer in the school. And so I think, you know, parents too need to, at home, reinforce that type of education and making sure that they prioritize that in the schools and outside of school, and making sure our kids know about, you know, the limitations of smartphones in the education setting.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer?
Technology in education is critical. As an educator, I can tell you that it has its place and it plays a fundamental role in not just disseminating information, but also strengthening engagement, strengthening content, and also, you know, it brings content to life. Now, I would not presume that the educators here at ETHS are not engaging the students. However, technology is not the only means by which we could do so. So by saying that it's at its place, of course, reading is critical because the numbers shows us that we're in a crisis. We're in a community crisis. We're in a national crisis where the 21st century students that we now have, they face the possibility of having to read, write, interpret data, interpret information in an inexorable amount of ways. So we do need that sort of technology. However, I believe it has its place. So two things I think must happen. One, it is incumbent on parents to inform their students that cell phone usage has its place, and that's outside of the classroom. And two, the school administration must support the teachers in creating the sort of rules or regulations that govern technology or cell phone use within the class or within the school compound. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Parsons?
Can you read that again?
Sure. In this era of smartphones, social media, etc., how can the schools interest students in basic skills such as reading, literature, and writing essays? Do you think these activities are still important?
So yes, I think those activities are still important, but I think we need to evolve with our students. I think we need to be creative in using those items, the social media, technology, and so forth, in a way that encourages the reading and the writing, and the comprehensive thinking that we need to happen from our students. I also think that there's a way for our schools to partner with nonprofits that can do that outside of the school environment, that can use social media and use technology as a means to help support the academic goals that exist within the school setting. So I don't think it's one or. I think we know the wave of technology is taking over. We know social media is what it is, whether or not we tell our youth not to use it or not. It's just a matter of how we instruct them to use it and how we use it to help us meet our achievement goals.
Thank you. Mr. Terich?
Yeah, the perennial question with technology and my persistent efforts with my daughter to wean off her phone for a little bit. I do, of course, think that reading, writing, essays, and literature is absolutely important, but I also think that technology is the wave of the future. It's where we're going, and I don't think there's any point in trying to fight it. I think a better approach is to try to figure out how we can use it, how we can master it, how we can think critically about it, and not just, be beholden to it and not engage with it in ways that are anything but critical. So I think that, we need to think about professional development for our teachers, how they can most effectively use technology in the classroom in ways that are engaging to students, in ways that develop them and their abilities to think critically, in their ways, to express their ideas and their thoughts, and to do the things that, the old-fashioned literature and essay writing, gives us. They can still have all of that, but technology is just another tool that we can incorporate more effectively rather than try to fight it.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer, we're going to start the next question with you. And so this is, the entire ETHS community showed its pride and excitement this month as the boys' basketball team advanced to the state finals. At the same time, some students and parents have noted that many girls' and boys' sports, as well as activities like the chess team and Wind Symphony, have also had great achievements but have not seen the same level of recognition by the school. Comment on whether you think this is a problem, and if so, why, and what your role as a board member should be in addressing it.
So first of all, congratulations to the basketball team on their exploits. I believe that just the exploits of all the students within ETHS brings a sense of pride and joy to the community. Overall, I'd say ETHS is actually the most impactful social institution in Evanston, and it has impacted the lives of pretty much everyone, bar none. Do I believe that the sports team or sports generally overshadows the achievements of our other students? Yes, because I'm also an athlete when I was in high school. So I believe there is a time and place where that does occur. What do I think we could do about it is we have to also, the school community and those involved in getting out the communication must also make it their point of duty to recognize these students, put them on blast, because we have the tools to actually do this. We have the tools in place, the communications, and make this a fanfare just as much as sports is a fanfare. Draw our attention, the community's attention, to the achievement of students outside of academics. And I believe that, as a board member, there's so much we could do, but I believe that one of the things we must do is just ensure that we hold the administration accountable to say, hey, ensure that you're highlighting the achievements of all students to ensure that they are also feel that they are part of the community.
Thank you. Ms. Parsons?
So I believe we do an awesome job in recognizing all our student achievements. We are a high school that, has extracurricular activities as long as a novel. I mean, any kid can participate in anything they choose to participate in. And when they make achievements, whether or not they're academic, civic, or an athletic, we highlight them. We highlight them in front of the board. We call them out in the community. We become national news. So there are many ways that we do this. And I think it goes back to our inability to communicate everything that we do to our community. And I think that if you have limited information of what we do, of course you gravitate towards what you think we don't do. So I'm proud of our boys basketball team, and I'm proud of all of our individual student accomplishments, those that came before the board last week and were recognized. So, and I don't think this is a board issue, quite honestly. I think board issues are policy. I think this is a school administration issue to say, okay, are there some gaps or can we do things differently? And it could be a student issue to say, this is how we want you to recognize us. They have power and they have voice in this, and it's not the parents', I think, direction to do anything with this.
Thank you. Mr. Terich?
Yeah, I agree that this isn't a board issue. However, I do want to say congratulations to all the students that have been recognized since this conversation did take place, and it did stimulate a lot of, I mean, this is a conversation that took place over social media, at least as far as I'm aware, in the past week since the great event on Saturday. But, I do think that, again, what I posted actually in response to that was what a great opportunity this is, how great it is that our students are bringing this to our attention and that we're listening to them. Students were saying, the basketball team, and it was announced, 3 times in one announcement, and maybe we don't need to do that at the expense of other students, or other achievements. So how great it is that our kids are bringing this, highlighting this, letting us know how they feel about it. But I do think at the end of the day, it's up to parents and administration to look at this and work this out in such a way. I can think of many other platforms and ways that we can resolve this issue very easily, and not detract from the basketball team or any of the other team's achievements, but that this is something that we can create more room at a longer table for more people to be recognized, for more students to be recognized, and for everybody to feel a sense of belonging and a sense of achievement, and that their achievements are being seen and heard.
Thank you. Ms. Rolowitz?
I do really empathize with this one. When I was in school, there was a record I wanted to break, but they didn't track female records for this particular sport, and so I broke the boy record, and they would not acknowledge me or list me on the board because it was just a boy record. So I do empathize with this, but it also does fall outside of the parameters of the responsibilities of the board. I follow on social media all the events and the successes of ETHS, and I'm sure it does feel really heavy towards certain particular sports, and those are also happen to be the sports that are popular in our American culture. So I think a lot of it is that. But I really do appreciate seeing all the other successes of academics and other types of things going on here, and I think I would just encourage families to boost their own kids and boost their own whatever their children are succeeding in on social media, and I think it will spread far and wide, because as soon as we saw those things popping up of people saying, here's my daughter and here's my child doing this, there was tons of local support, and immediately started spreading everywhere, and that was where I got a lot of my knowledge about it too. So I think that's one way to look at it.
Thank you. The next question, we're going to start with you, Ms. Parsons. And the question is, do you feel the ETHS school board has done an adequate job incorporating the broader community, such as teachers, in the decision-making process around educational programming and policies?
Has the school board done an adequate job? No, I would say not. In incorporating the teachers' voices, we have not. And so I think that there's definitely opportunity and room for improvement in that area. The school board's #1 employee is that of the superintendent, and we hold the superintendent accountable for his administration and for how he runs the school, as well as the achievement of our students. I think that there could be ways to engage the teachers, especially as we're thinking about district goals. We could provide the feedback, and I know the last time we came up with our district goals, we engaged the community as well as the teachers to participate in a Saturday conversation around the goals. So they were very engaged at that point. But there could definitely be more opportunities to create open forums for them to have discussions and to provide feedback in a way that it gets to the school board level.
Thank you. Mr. Terich?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to look at this as a learning organization. ETHS is a large environment with a lot of sort of constituent groups, and we need to think about the teachers perhaps a little bit more as part of a two-way conversation. And, you know, there are lots of ways to do that that are appropriate and respectful of the administration and the fact that the board is, after all, you know, a policy-making body with a single employee, and that it's really up to the administration to execute on, you know, the sort of care and development of the teachers and the experience of the teachers in the classroom and in this environment as a whole. But I do think, you know, we can think about this as an organization where there is more of a dialogue going on, and that there are ways to collect feedback and ways to stimulate discussion, ways to engage teachers so that, you know, in instances where teachers might feel like decisions are being made and they're, you know, in the role of executing, that they might be able to have more of a vested interest in providing feedback on the success or on alternatives to ways things are being implemented.
Thank you. Ms. Rolowitz?
My understanding of the role of the school board is that we have one employee, and that's the superintendent. I don't believe that we have the ability to directly communicate, negotiate with teachers on different subjects. I think that in doing something like that, it could undermine the trust built between the board and the administration. There are mechanisms for teachers to communicate up through the administration and to the board as a result. And as imperfect as that sounds, that's how the structure is right now. And I think as a board, we can, you know, ensure that our administration is listening to the teachers and that they do have a clear route of communication with the teachers. But as far as our role on the board, we can't create or implement a new communication with the teachers without going through the administration first.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer?
This is a particularly interesting question because as of 2018, the last survey that came out as it relates to the survey developed by the 5 Essential survey developed by the University of Chicago, it actually shows that ETHS came out below average in teacher participation in decision making as it relates to educational policies and programming. So while all my colleagues here will agree that teachers are important in the day-to-day instructions of students, they don't believe it is important that board members ascertain feedback from the teachers who are very much invested and involved in creating the strong educational learning environment to help our students succeed. So I must say this, if we're serious about making a dent on the achievement gap, or if we're serious about creating the type of policies or environment, learning environment that will help our students succeed, we must, it is incumbent, it's our duty, it's our moral obligation as board members to ensure that we solicit feedback of the stakeholders. And teachers are foundational to everything that we do in this building, because it is the teachers we evaluate on their performance of not one single student, but all students. So hence, we must collect feedback, whether through surveys, whether through holding informal talks, whatever it means necessary, whatever means necessary for us to do this, we must gain the feedback of teachers, especially around developing policies or programs. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, and I think we're just going to have time for this next one and then perhaps one more after that. And we're going to start with you, Mr. Terich. This one is, in June of 2018, the District 202 Board extended the contract to 2022 of Dr. Eric Witherspoon, who has served as superintendent since 2006. Since 2022 falls within the 4-year term you will serve if elected, what are your thoughts on a successor superintendent? How long before the end of the contract term should a search begin? And what qualities and experience will be most important in considering a candidate?
Wow, I wasn't expecting that question. I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that you need to, you know, as a board, I think Dr. Witherspoon has been absolutely phenomenal. And I think that he's really done incredible work for the high school on so many levels, creating a culture of belonging and inclusion and really true, genuine love, I think. And I've been so impressed with his communications over the years to the ETHS student community, and the way that he's really fostered an environment of student achievement and a sense of belonging here. So I really want to give him tremendous credit. I think that, you know, he's been a role model, and I think he's you know, what he's done with the persistence and urgency and sort of addressing, detracking and weathering that storm. I think we need leadership like that. And, you know, I think it's probably something that you'd want to start thinking about, you know, in 2020, toward the end of, you know, 2020 or early 2021 to really put that national search out. I don't have experience with that. I only have experience with dean searches at Northwestern. They get started pretty early, and you really need to cast your net wide and make sure you're getting the most exceptional candidates. So, but I definitely think it's been a good path that we've been on with Dr. Witherspoon.
Thank you. Ms. Rolowitz?
Yeah, this is an interesting question because I think it kind of assumes that maybe Dr. Witherspoon wouldn't want to stay on beyond his 2022 contract. But let's assume that we would be looking for a new superintendent. I think that I also agree that Dr. Witherspoon has made such an impact on this school in his tenure here. And I think this school is completely different than it was before he arrived, and all for the better. If I were looking for a new superintendent, I would want to make sure that it's somebody that can fill his shoes and who has the very broad experience and skill set that he has, but also just somebody who is so honored to work here. I mean, this man loves this community. He loves this school, and anyone who meets him knows that. We really need leadership who is so invested in the school, who has actual real relationships with the students, and who is willing to stick their neck out and put their career on the line to further benefit our students. And I would be looking for someone very much like Dr. Witherspoon, especially in regards to his commitment to our equity work and our commitment to the Black male, and to really focusing long-term on addressing our race predicting outcomes issue.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer?
Like my colleagues, we must commend the work that Dr. Witherspoon has done. I've met him personally, and I think he's a wonderful human being to be around. Beyond that, if we're all things being equal and we're on the lookout for another superintendent, I believe that by the second year of the contract renewal, we must start looking at what the prospective candidate would look like. So we must take at least a 2 or 3 year look into this. We must be forward thinkers, and we must be bold. I think the 3 most important things that we have to look for in our incoming candidate would be: 1, educational leadership. The district superintendent steers the educational leadership of the entire district. And he's also tasked with creating what the goals would look like for the school, and in tandem with the board. Someone who will be willing to work with the board and also hold his or her administrative team to the goals which are set and the tasks which are at hand. Second, he must be committed to bolstering policies, whether they be academic or educational equity. And lastly, I believe that we must get someone who prioritizes our resources to ensuring that we're actually meeting the fundamental stated goal, which is to increase every single child's academic trajectory based on the multiple measures that's outlined. And these are the things that we must look forward to in our next leader. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Parsons?
So if we're looking for a new leader, the board that's elected on April 2nd should start planning for that succession plan right then and there. 2022 will be here before you know it, and it will take a lot of work to find someone better than Dr. Witherspoon. So I'm not looking for another Dr. Witherspoon. Dr. Witherspoon was perfect for the time we needed him to be. I'm looking for someone that is better, someone that is seen in our community as a leader, someone that can navigate this very dynamic and complicated community that we live in, someone that is an equity leader, not only by practice, but personally, and definitely someone that has a vested interest of doing what's best for students first, responding to the needs of students first. So this is a hard order. But without a doubt, the person that steps into this position as being a new superintendent would have to be forward-thinking, a visionary, and be way better than what we have right now.
Thank you. We are going to go to what I believe is going to be the last question, and we're going to start with Ms. Rolowitz. What would you do to address a pension shift if the Illinois legislature should approve that long-threatened legislation?
What would I do to
Address the pension shift from the state to the district, I assume.
This is a question that I don't have a lot of specific knowledge on. My understanding is that the current administration and our financial leaders in the school have been anticipating this could possibly come down the road. I think they've been anticipating it for years. And they have put us in a financial situation of stability and safety to so that we aren't completely caught off guard and we can maintain our financial status if something like that comes down the pipeline. Beyond that, I don't have specific knowledge on the subject of how to continue funding the teacher pension if it moves to the district level.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer?
Pension funding has always been a hotly debated topic, whether it be at our local school board level or even at Springfield. So one of the things that we must recognize is that ETHS, the school district, is actually fiscally, it's a great fiscal steward. We're a fiscally healthy district. So I think, yes, while we must look to supporting our teachers or ensuring that we provide the best services pension-wise for our teachers, I think we must also look at what I consider unique ways or find more partners to ensure that we, one, not just recruit and attract, but we take care of the teachers once they decide to retire. And I believe that goes into what's our obligation morally to not just our students, but to our educators. Yes, it's going to be tough, and I understand we will possibly assume additional costs, but I think that fundamentally we've planned ahead for this, and I think we must continue to monitor the situation, and then we make the necessary adjustment and take the steps to ensure that we provide the necessary support for our teachers.
Thank you. Ms. Parsons?
So as a board, where this is our number one responsibility of being financial stewards over your tax dollars, our administration has been dealing with this for a very long time, anticipating that this could happen. So we create budgets to support that, so that we are not surprised, and it doesn't affect the quality of what we offer our students or the students' experience if this happens. So those plans and those strategies have been discussed and implemented long before if it happens. We program and we work on the basis that it will happen. It's not a matter of if, it's when it happens, and we will be prepared for it as we have done so over the past several years of making sure that our district is financially sound, that we continue to be strong financial stewards, and we plan for the volatile nature of our state funding.
Thank you, Mr. Terich.
Yeah, I don't know how much more I can add, actually, to that, except to say that my understanding is that, ETHS has been a top performer in terms of its fiscal accountability and reporting and foresight into the unknown and into the possibility that something like this could happen, and so it has been conservative in that sense, and responsible in making sure that these, if in the event that something like this were to happen, that it would be in a position to be able to uphold its obligations to the pension fund. So I don't know how much more I can really say, except that, obviously, that's, a conversation that I would continue to be engaged in as a board member, and something that I would always, as part of my platform, to be fiscally responsible and transparent, and an accountable steward of our resources, that would be certainly included in that. And then to keep those from impacting the students in any negative way.
Thank you. We are now going to go to the closing statements, and we are going to start with Ms. Parsons.
Thank you, thank you. So this flew by. I only have a minute and a half, so thank you all for coming out. I happen to believe that the school board election is the single most important vote that you can make. I believe that when you vote for a school board election, you're voting for the future. So I want to first ask everyone that's listening, whether you're frustrated with the process or not, that you really just come out and vote. Make a decision, do your homework, and vote. If you're doing that, then our students recognize that, and they know that you're supporting their future. If you don't vote, our students recognize that, and they know that you're supporting their future. So it's just critical that you do that. I would end by saying that if you want a school board member that's vested in serving our entire community, and if you want a school board member that is youth-centric and making decisions that best support the well-being of all students, if you want a school board member that is able to navigate all parts of our community and sit down with those that have and those that are working very hard to have, and if you want a school board member that is able to navigate all parts of our community and participate in courageous conversations, and finally, if you want a school board member that is doing this for no other reason than the vision of collective power, of the collective power that the Evanston can create to make a change, then I would ask for your vote and say that I'm that school board member. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out tonight. I'm always grateful when I'm invited into spaces like these. So I'll say to you that public service for me is a calling. It's not a business, and which is why I'm here wanting to serve my community. It's why I've spent the last decade serving the communities of which I'm a part, and Evanston being no different. I come to you telling you that I know exactly what it feels like and what exactly impacts the teaching learning experience of students. I bring to you the perspective of an educator, a minority parent, and more importantly, an immigrant. And I actually represent the missing voices, or the voice that's not directly invited to the table as it is when it comes to creating policies that will affect the educational outcomes of all our students. More importantly, I am versed in, and I am also evaluated on, my ability to provide individualized feedback to both you as parents and students and to the community at large. So I say to you, a vote for me isn't vote for me personally, but it is for our future. Empower our future, vote Slaney Palmer. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rolowitz?
I come to this position as a community member who is intimately aware of the barriers to access and success by our marginalized residents, and who's willing to listen to them and amplify their voices to make their needs known. I believe that we need to have our values as Evanston residents, our values of inclusion and diversity, be reflected in our school, in our policy, in our budget. I believe school boards must have diversity in voice and background with a direct line to the needs of the community in order to be the most successful and ensure that our resources and opportunities are available to all who come through ETHS. My goal is for all students and families to feel equally valued, understood, and served at ETHS, regardless of their background or need. Please join me in this critical work and vote for me on April 2nd to be your advocate at ETHS. And please get out and vote. We've had low voter turnout this week, so please make sure you get that done by April 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Terrett?
Yes, thank you all for coming out tonight. It's great to have interest, and it is an important use of your voice to vote for your school board because of its prominence and center in the community. I'll just say that equity, like education itself, is not a one-size-fits-all proposition. It looks and feels differently for one student as opposed to another, and that's why equity is such a good tool and such a good lens to use. It has the ability to benefit each of us individually while working holistically and structurally for the benefit of all. To have an inclusive, culturally sensitive, historically accurate curriculum benefits all of us. To interact in an environment where all students belong and feel included benefits all of us. ETHS knows this. It needs a board that can champion those goals. It needs members who will be ferocious champions of education, equity, and excellence for all students. Every student here at ETHS has the ability to thrive, but they can only do so in an ecosystem founded on and faithful to these principles. So we need a board that is 100% equity focused and has members who are experienced in the fields of education, organizational change, policymaking, budgeting, and financial administration. I bring that experience through my 20 years in higher education at Northwestern. As a parent of a 10th grader, navigating high school with her on a daily basis, I see the board's policies in action, and I bring my commitment to the work of equity through my work in the community and at Northwestern. And so for all these reasons, I hope to have your vote by April 2nd
Thank you.
for 202.
Before we wrap up tonight, early voting has started. You can early vote, no excuses, at any early voting location. The nearest ones are the Morton Civic Center at 2100 Ridge here in Evanston, Skokie Village Hall, 5127 Oakton in Skokie, and if you happen to work downtown, the county clerk's main office at 69 West Washington in Chicago. There are 13 people running for 3 seats on Oakton Community College, so that's a very hard one to figure out. There is a link and information about that in this document. There are also flyers by the door, which I urge you to pick up on your way out. And for District 202, you'll be electing 3 members of a 7-member Board of Education for a 4-year term. And as someone who doesn't live in Evanston, I have to say I'm very impressed with the choices you have in front of you. So let's give our candidates a big round of applause. And please remember to vote.